Welcome to the Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, where every cup tells a story, and every story starts with a sip. Join us on a journey of adventure, camaraderie, and of course, the finest brews, served hot and steeped in mystery. From dragons to ancient legends, we're brewing up more than just coffee. Today's tale begins with anticipation held so tightly it almost feels like stillness. In the heart of Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, a long-watched green egg finally gives way to what it has been hiding within, and nothing about what emerges matches what anyone expected. As firelight gathers around new life, old assumptions begin to crack just like the shell on the hearth, and the tavern finds itself facing a question far more delicate than naming a dragon. What do you do when the world answers you differently than you were prepared for? Now, grab your mug, settle in, and get ready for the next chapter in our brewing saga. Season 2, Episode 20, The Hatchling's Dawn. Morning had come and gone over Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern, but the day carried a tension unlike any the old Crossroads Tavern had ever known. It settled into every corner of the tavern and lingered in the air like the promise of something just beyond reach. Every eye, every thought, every movement seemed to drift back toward the same place beside the hearth, where the green dragon egg rested in its cushioned nook beneath the steady glow of the fire. The first signs had come at sunrise when the egg gave a faint tremor, subtle enough that Patches had nearly convinced herself she imagined it. But then it came again. And again. By midday, soft internal thumps could be heard if anyone leaned close enough, quiet but unmistakable. Every so often, warmth pulsed outward from the shell, heating the blankets around it and sending a gentle wave of heat across the room. By evening, no one could focus on much else. No one wanted to leave it unattended. Java paced tight circles near the hearth, his claws clicking softly against the wooden floorboards as his dark scales caught the shifting firelight.
It moved again.
You said that 10 minutes ago.
Because it did. Again.
I am simply pointing out that your constant updates are unnecessary. We all possess functioning eyes.
You've reorganized your spice pouch 3 times.
That is not nervousness. That is preparation.
Nived sat nearby with his forelegs crossed and his chin tilted upward in carefully crafted indifference, though the half-empty piles of sorted spice tins around him betrayed his claim entirely. Across the room, Patches knelt beside a basket she had lined with enough blankets to cushion a fall from the tallest tower in the kingdom. Beside it sat warm cloths, a steaming kettle, and several other supplies she had gathered despite not actually knowing what a newly hatched dragon might need.
What if he's cold? Or hungry? Or scared? What if baby dragons need complete darkness? Or complete silence? Do dragons even like blankets?
If I were hatching, I would prefer a heroic welcome speech and perhaps a trumpet fanfare.
You have never hatched.
A minor technicality. Have we considered reading to it? Something inspiring. Tales of conquest. Ancient battle poetry. Tax records.
Tax records?
If that doesn't encourage swift emergence, nothing will.
Java groaned. Nived muttered something about this being the strongest argument yet for selective hearing. At the edge of the firelight, Fate Skuld sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap, her pale gaze fixed on the egg. While the others fussed and fretted, she remained perfectly still, calm as moonlight on still water. Java finally stopped pacing and turned toward her.
You know something, don't you?
I know that beginnings arrive when they are ready.
That is an exceptionally elegant way of saying absolutely nothing.
Then perhaps nothing is what needs saying.
The room settled into silence again. The fire crackled softly in the hearth. Outside, evening deepened over the crossroads, and shadows stretched long across the windows. Then the egg trembled. Every head turned at once. A second tremor followed, stronger than the first, rocking the shell gently against its blankets. A muffled thump sounded from within. Warmth pulsed outward, stronger than before, washing over everyone gathered around it. Patches clasped her hands tightly.
Do you think this is it?
It may still take hours.
No. This feels different.
Bradicus rose from his chair and stepped closer, his usual theatrical confidence replaced by quiet reverence. He crouched beside the hearth, his voice dropping low as though speaking too loudly might disturb something sacred.
Easy now, little one.
The shell shuddered sharply. A jagged sound split the room. Crack! The sharp report echoed through the tavern and stole the breath from every chest. A thin fracture had appeared across the green shell. No one moved or spoke. The waiting was over. For one suspended moment, no one in Dungeon Brew Coffee Tavern seemed willing to breathe. The thin fracture across the egg's surface glimmered in the firelight, jagged and delicate, as though the shell itself had become uncertain whether to hold fast or finally surrender what it had guarded for so long. Then the answer came. Another sharp crack split through the tavern. And another. The shell shuddered violently, rocking against its nest of blankets as new fractures raced outward in branching lines. Tiny pieces broke free and tumbled softly onto the hearthrug below. The warmth pouring from the egg deepened, rolling through the room in steady waves that chased away every lingering chill. Without a word, the team gathered closer. Java crouched low beside the hearth, his pacing finally stilled. Nived stepped forward despite himself, abandoning every pretense of calm composure. Patches dropped to her knees, clutching one of her carefully folded blankets to her chest. Even Bradicus, whose usual instinct was to fill every silence with commentary, stood utterly still. This was no ordinary moment, tavern tale, or passing curiosity. This was the birth of a dragon. The shell split further with a final jagged snap. A tiny claw emerged first, pale and trembling as it reached through the broken opening. It flexed once, then gripped the edge of the shell with surprising determination. Another crack. A small snout pushed through. Then, with one awkward wriggle and a shower of green shell fragments, the hatchling tumbled free into the waiting blankets. Silence filled the room. Not because he was weak or something was wrong, but because he was not at all what any of them had expected. The green shell lay shattered around him, its bright emerald pieces scattered across the hearthrug like fallen leaves. Yet the dragon who had emerged from it bore no trace of that color. His scales were a rich, creamy orange, soft and luminous in the firelight. Beneath his tiny folded wings glowed a delicate salmon pink, the same warm shade tracing along the two small horns atop his head. Rounded ridge plates ran from the crown of his neck all the way down his spine and along the length of his tail, each one brushed with that same rosy hue. When he finally lifted his head and blinked open his eyes, they shone a light caramel brown, warm and bright as sunlight through fresh brewed tea. He looked almost unreal. Like the colors of dawn had somehow taken shape and wrapped themselves in dragon scales. Java was the first to move. He leaned forward slowly, his wide eyes studying every detail with open fascination.
He
stopped, unable to find the words. Nived stared, his usual certainty nowhere to be found as he blinked rapidly at the hatchling.
That is not possible. Is it?
His gaze darted to the shattered green shell, then back to the tiny dragon.
That is very definitely not how colors are supposed to work.
Patches, meanwhile, had already dropped her blanket over her arm and reached toward the hatchling with careful hands.
Is he warm enough? Oh, he looks warm, but what if that's just his scales? Do dragons get chilly after hatching?
The little dragon let out a soft chirrup, shifting awkwardly as he tested his legs. Patches immediately looked halfway to tears.
Oh, he's precious.
Bradicus said nothing at first. For perhaps the first time since any of them had known him, the warrior monk simply stood there, utterly speechless. The firelight reflected in his wide eyes as he looked down at the tiny creature before him, and something deep and unguarded softened across his face. Awe settled there first, followed quickly by something fiercer and deeper. Protective pride. The kind that arrives all at once and without explanation. His voice, when it finally came, was low and reverent.
By the old roads. He's beautiful.
The words seemed to settle over the room like a blessing. The hatchling turned his head at the sound, blinking up at Bradicus with those warm caramel eyes. Bradicus exhaled slowly, his expression shifting into quiet wonder.
Well now, would you look at that? Aren't you magnificent?
Across from him, Fate Scold watched the scene unfold with calm, knowing stillness. The faintest smile touched her lips, not surprised but quietly pleased, as though the world had simply revealed what it had always intended. The The hatchling gave a small, uncertain chirp and unfolded his salmon-colored wings for the first time. And as the firelight caught them, the tavern seemed to glow with the colors of sunrise. For several long moments, no one moved. The hatchling sat nestled among the shattered remains of his green shell, blinking wide caramel eyes at the gathering of faces surrounding him. His tiny chest rose and fell in quick little breaths as he took